Okay, let's press on in this chapter, and we're going to unwrap the inner walls here, which are the walls between the two major parts of the building, and the staircase that we see here. The staircase is probably the most complex part of the model overall, and therefore is obviously the most difficult. So we'll spend more time on this area than the inside walls, obviously. So let's have a look at the UV layout of these two elements. And here we have the two interior walls of the building. As I said, they're just the main two walls sandwiched between the two main parts of the building. And then we go on to the staircase, which is, as I said, the most difficult part. And you can see we've got a lot of different elements here. We've got the steps here, the top of the steps here. These are the rises of the steps. Top of the steps, the areas going down the side of the steps. And this area here is this area underneath the stair. And we've got this element here which actually sits within this flat area at the top here on the landing, and so on and so forth. So we've got quite a few elements to unwrap there. So in this DVD I'm going to show you two different ways of unwrapping the most difficult part, really, which is the stair. And in my original attempt I've used this technique where I've actually separated the risers and the top of the steps into two separate areas. But I'm actually going to show you another way on this DVD where you actually have the risers and the top of the steps kept together, and that will give you an advantage over this method. So let's go on back into Max now, and we'll just unwrap these two elements. Okay, let's make a start. We'll just hide the staircase here by using the layers panel, which is off the screen, and we're just going to unwrap this element first, the area between the two walls. And just a little notice, which we've got this little polygon here, and that's from another part of the model, which is, I believe, the right wall and the roof of the tower. Now this particular polygon actually sits just underneath a pipe that comes from the chimney, and you never actually get to see it, so the UVs on it aren't particularly critical. But later on in the DVD we can actually reconcile that with the top of this model here, and we can fix that little issue that we can see there. So I'll just hide this element again, select the object, we'll put an unwrap modifier on it. I'll just turn off the pelt seams because we don't need those. And then I'll just go into the face selection and planar angle, and we'll just select this face here, and I'll just go into the editor. We'll just expand it up here a bit. And the first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to break up these faces so we make sure that we're not going to end up dragging things around when we start working on them. Just turn off the texture display because we don't really need that, and that just clutters our view. So firstly, let me just select this little face here, go into the editor, right click, break, go up to mapping, unfold mapping, okay, and there it is. We'll just move it over here for now, just move it out of the way. Next we'll go for this set of faces here, go back into the editor and break again, mapping, unfold mapping, okay. That you can see it's rotated it round here, but we can just quickly fix that just by rotating. Now we know that this face actually lies to the right of this one, and if I just select this edge you can see that the corresponding edge is this one here. It's they share that edge in common. So I'll just click on select element, drag this over here, and later on we'll stitch those together. The last element is this set of walls here, so we'll just select these faces, go up to unfold mapping, okay, that, yep, and that's resized it, and now there's no stretching and so forth going on with the polygons there. And I can just rotate that, and I can put it into position here. Now before I actually stitch these together, there is something to bear in mind, and it's that this wall here isn't actually as high as this wall. So we've got to be careful that when we stitch it together we don't actually stretch either of these elements to try and get them to fit together. So firstly we'll go back into the editor and we'll stitch this set of faces to this face here first. And I'm going to select this edge here, and we're going to use it to actually stitch up this element here. So we'll go into Tools, Stitch Selected, and we can just use the default values, and that's great. That's looking pretty perfect. Now if we select this edge here, I'm going to stitch this object next, go to Tools, Stitch Selected, and you can see we've got a bit of a problem here. It's aligning the cluster, which is great, and it's scaling the cluster, but it's not actually correct. And the reason for that is it's using in terms of weighting, which object to use as the scale, it's using a value of 0.5. This is where this bias value comes in here. So it's trying to reach a value which is halfway between the scale of this object and halfway between the scale of that object. And neither is correct. It's not really going to give you a good result. So it's not always obvious which way to go with a bias, but just by pulling the spinner around, you can actually get a good idea. So there you can go. You can see if I use a lower bias, it's actually now using the scale of this cluster here as the base scale. If I go the opposite direction, you can see it's now going to use the scale of this, and you get a kind of weird result. So I can just go to 0 again, okay that, and that's it. We've got it unwrapped. We've got this little rogue face here, so what we'll do is we'll just unwrap that one as well. Let me just turn on face selection, unfold mapping, okay that, and it's just used, made it fill that area there. And then I'll just use control to scale it down, move it down here for now temporarily, just move it out of the way. And later on in the DVD we'll reconcile that with the top of the tower. And now we need to get this. We'll just hold down shift, move it over into position. We'll use this bottom corner here as our guide point. We'll just move that manually into position there. That's looking pretty good. Now all we've got to do is hold down control and then scale it down until it fits into this area. So you can see it's not a great fit. I mean, it will actually result in all the UVs being, perfectly good on this area, but it's not really making that good a use of the entire bitmap area. So maybe later on in the DVD we'll be able to fit in more elements here. And this is something that you're always going to be fighting with, getting the UV layout to be unstretched and correct, and then at the same time getting it to fill this area as good as possible. And it's always going to be a fight against it being as easy to texture as possible for your texture artist, and for it to use texture memory as efficiently as possible. So there we go, we've got that element done. Let's just shut down that window, and now I can just hide this element and unhide the stairs. Okay, so now we have the staircase, and we're just going to unwrap this element. Let's add an unwrap modifier on there, get straight into editing, and just expand the window out here a little bit. Let's see what we have here. Well, at the moment everything's map planar, so we're not really going to see a great deal. So let's minimize that window, go into face mode, select some faces. I'm just going to unwrap this back element here, and we'll go back into the editor. We'll break that off, go to mapping, unfold mapping, okay that, and let's see what that looks like over here. So if we've got a pretty good unwrap there. Yeah, it's not looking too bad. Maybe it's rotated it a little bit there. Let's see if we've got the same thing going on up here. Nope, that's looking pretty good. So let's just pop that here for now. On to the next part, we'll unwrap the underside of the stairs here. So I'm just going to use planar angle to get most of this. And just select that element there. There, and that's pretty much got everything. Turn off planar angle. Just need to deselect these elements here. Make sure we haven't got any rogue faces selected. Having a look around, yep, that's looking pretty cool. We can just unwrap that as well. So let's go back into the editor, mapping, unfold mapping, and that's fine. And we'll just pop that over here. Let's just stick this over here for now. And let me just see if this is rotated as well. No, that's looking pretty square, so that's great. That's unfolded. Okay, so we've got the underside of the stairs, we've got the back of the stairs. Let's do the side of the stairs now. And we'll just select these faces, planar angle. Just to hold down shift control, just to select those. And just deselect these. Oops. There we are. Make sure we haven't got anything extra selected as per usual. Yeah, that's looking pretty cool. And we'll just go into the editor, break that off, and we're just going to rotate this around a couple of times. So, nope, I always pick the wrong direction with that tool for some reason. And we'll just move this over here, just out of the way for now. That's great there. Let's have a look. Yeah, that's nice and square. So that's looking pretty cool. And now we've got the side, we've got the back, we've got the underside of the stairs. Let's get the top of the stairs now. We'll just do these side elements and these parts here. So let's start selecting these faces. Oops, let's leave that. We'll put that in a separate element, I think, using these faces here. Just select down here. We've got the faces all the way down to the bottom. Let's grab these as well. Yep, that's looking pretty cool. Let's go into the editor and try unfolding that and see what we get. Let's break it first. Unfold mapping. Yeah, that's looking great. Actually, it's rotated it slightly, so let's just make a quick fix on that. We'll just rotate it ourselves by eye. It's not looking bad. We'll just move this over here. Just put this to the side of this here. That's cool. So we've got those elements now, and we just need to get this element here and just unwrap that. Just select these faces, go back in here, unfold mapping. Okay, and that's done that. We'll just move that down here. Okay, that's pretty cool. As you can see, we've got the most parts of the stairs done. We've got the underside of the stairs, we've got the back area of the stairs, we've got the top parts of the stair here and the landing, we've got the side of the stairs here. So now we can move on and actually start to unwrap the main stairs itself. Now, when I was preparing for this DVD, I actually used a particular method, and they both, the method I used and the method I'm going to show you as well in this chapter, they both have their good and bad points. The method I used was I had the top of each stairs, or each stair I should say, as one set of UVs, and each stair is at 90 degrees, so they actually stack up really nicely on top of each other, so I can actually select them in this way. And then if we go into the editor, I can just go in here. You can see they're at a funny angle to us because of the projection. I'll go into unfold mapping. We'll give this a try, see what happens. That's not going to give us much of a good result. So what we need to do here is to actually apply a UV mapping to it to actually give us a good result. So we'll just leave that the way it is. That's not a big problem. And we'll click off here. And it's perfectly valid to actually collapse down the mesh when you're working on it. And you can basically go between different UV unwrap modifiers and work your way through the model. So I'm just going to right click here, convert to editable poly, and that's baked in those UVs at that point because we were happy with them. That was all looking pretty cool. Just add another unwrap modifier, and I'm going to go in, select these faces again on top. What I'm going to do this time is I'm going to apply a UV map just to these faces, and that will give us planar mapping from above, and that will basically unwrap these for us in a tick. So that's a pretty quick way of doing that. So let's just select these, and now we need to open up the panel a bit, and we're going to apply planar mapping. Just make sure it's in the correct plane. It's looking pretty good. And then what we're going to do now is we're going to just fit that to the current selection. So UV space completely fits around our current mesh selection, as you can see around here. If we go into the editor, there are our steps. The only problem is they're stretched out to fill the entire UV space, which is caused by this projection. So what we need to do now is we need to break them, and then we need to move them. So I'm just going to move these over here. Just move these over to here, and let's have a look. We're actually overlapping this earlier element, so we'll just move it over here a little bit further. And I know now that I've got this area here, and these steps should fit into this space, so really we need to get that to happen. So let's move these over here. These steps should fit in between these elements here, so we'll just get this into position so it kind of fits in that space. Let's just do this roughly by eye. Just get that to there. There we go. And now we'll just use the scale tool. Now I'm just going to scale, holding shift, scale that down in that direction. And when we get in here, we want to actually fit into this area here. So I'm just going to do this by eye, zoom in here, and fit it into that space. So that's pretty good. We've got a really good UV projection there going on. We can leave that in that spot. That's perfectly good. We've got a really nice scale there now. And later, when we go to do the same thing for the risers, we'll use exactly the same area here to scale our element, and then we can actually move it out of the way again to give it a clear area of UVs. So let's do that now. We'll come out of face mode again, and we'll collapse this down again, convert to editable poly, add an unwrap modifier. We've got tons of seams on this model now, and that's because of all these steps. Basically each one of these steps is currently isolated from each other. So I'll go into face mode and just select these faces here. Just, you know, you could do this manually one by one, or you could just do a gross selection like this, and it just depends on which way you like working, really. So let me just go down here, selecting these risers on the stairs. And we need this one down the bottom as well, so let me just go up from here. Quickly go up there. Make sure we haven't selected any back faces. Nope, that's cool. Put a planar map on that. Same technique as before. We need to put it in the y-axis. Fit it to our selection. That's great. And then we can go into the editor. Same problem as before, it's all stretched out. So what we need to do now is very quickly, I'll just move it over here into the same position as this element here. Let me just do this by eye. Shift it here. That's cool. Go down to this corner, pull here. We'll do the same kind of thing again. We'll just move this into position. This should give us a similar kind of scale. And then once we've done that, we can then just move it out the way again, and that gives it a clear UV space. So that's one method of unwrapping the stairs, and it's good in that if you want to look at these faces from above on the steps, if you can imagine if somebody was walking down these stairs and they dropped a bucket of paint, then the paint would probably splash from this step, this step, this step, this step, this step. So if you wanted to paint that in the material editor, let's say in Photoshop or Painter, whatever texturing tool you're working with, it would be easiest to then have these faces be contiguous, and you can just then paint strokes across them. So it's good in that way. The bad point is you get this kind of fracturing between the flat top part of the step and the riser, and the UVs aren't contiguous between those two parts. So if you want to create a chip in the rock here, and you want the same chip here, it's going to be harder to actually get those two elements to join up. So there is a second method that you can use, and I'll just quickly demonstrate this before we finish off here by resizing all of our clusters. And we just need to go back into the editor and rescale it back up again, so we've got a nice workspace to do our stuff in. And then we can just close that down again. What I'm going to do now is just select all of the steps. We'll just use face, ignore back facing on. We'll just select all of the steps. There we are. Deselect anything from behind that we really don't need, such as these faces and this face here. Check it, make sure that we've got a nice selection. Yeah, we've got everything we need there, and we can just simply unfold that. And the advantage now is that we will have nice seams between here and here. We've got a continuity in the UVs going across the steps. So probably out of the two methods, this is the best of the two. When it unfolds these, it's actually going to create a big long object, and the downside to that is then we're going to have to probably break the stairs into two to actually fit it into the UV space that we have available to us. So let's go back into the editor. There are the two sets of faces, and we'll just go to mapping, unfold mapping, okay that, and there you are. We've got a big continuous line of faces. Now the scale of these may be wrong, so we might need to actually scale these afterwards, and that's almost certainly the case. So let's get the width correct. I'll just zoom in here, put this into position here, and we know that the width is the width that we can see here, so we'll just put this here like so, put that into position, and now we can just drag this corner. I'm just going to hold down Control to do this, to make sure it's uniform. We'll drag down this corner until it fills the width of the area that we've got here. That's great. Hold down Shift, we'll just move that back up into position. We'll just leave these two objects like this, because any scale that we scale change that we make to the stair, we probably want to happen to these steps as well. So we really need to make sure that we make the same changes to both elements. And let's actually do that now. What we're going to do now is actually scale down these different clusters and scale them up and make sure they all match with each other. We have actually two sets of clusters left, and these are here. We can use select by element to actually separate these out. So I'll just select this element here, and as you can see, that's just selected that element along here, and they're both facing, you could say they're both facing the same way, and depending on how you look at the object, I would probably say they're facing the wrong way. So what we'll do is we'll just select both of these. We'll go up here to the flipping tools and we'll flip them horizontally. There we are. So we now have them flipped around. We'll just move these up here out the way, and let's start making scale changes now to get all of these UVs to match up with each other. So first of all, let's get this UV here, this little cluster here. We'll just move this into position here, and let me just see what joins up to that object. Well, firstly, we have the underside of the stairs. So we're looking at this object here at the moment, and we have the underside of the stairs, and we need to get the UVs here to match up to the scale here. So I'll just make this window a little bit smaller so we can see what we're doing. And we need to keep an eye on the relative scale of these two objects here. So let me just scale down the window a little bit. We need a little bit more room. We're going to get this element here. Just move it over here slightly. And we just need to scale now and see what happens. Let's try scaling up a bit. So we need to make these UVs smaller. And when we get it to there, you can see we've got a pretty good match going up there. So that's looking pretty cool. We know that these two are great now. And let's go around to the other corner here, to this back face here, and you can see that these UVs are very scrunched up. So we need to expand those out a bit. So let's go back to the back wall here. And the reason for that is, you know, the scale of the wall is too big. So we'll just move this here. We know that the height of the here and here should be the same. So we've got a pretty good guide there. So we can just move this into position somewhere around here. There we are. We can go up here now and we can just scale this down. Hold down Control so it's uniform in size. And we know that's pretty much near enough damn it perfect scale there. So we've got those two patches of UVs to match up. So we now have 3 patches going pretty well. We now need to do the top of the wall, and if we get the top of the wall, we then get the steps as well. So let's get the top of the wall working. We'll just put this in position here so you can see what we're doing. Go back into the editor, and we know that the top of the wall should match up with the top of here, so we can just do that very easily. We'll just grab this entire chunk, move this up here, put this into position, and then we can just position this by eye. Should be at the corner of the wall here. And then we can scale this out using Control, Uniform Control, so we get a uniform scale. That's great, that should be pretty cool. And then we can just move that up using Shift so it doesn't overlap. And in one stroke there, we've got the top of the wall mapped up correctly, and we've got the steps. The steps are now using exactly the same scale as the top of the wall, so that's all looking pretty cool. And for these little elements here, well, we need to try and make those match up with the steps as best as we can. So let's do that now. We'll just go in here. There are these elements. We'll just grab both of them at the same time, move them down here, and I'm just going to move this into position so it's roughly right. We just want this line here to follow this line here. It's got the same gradient, or at least it should have anyway. And what we're going to do now, we're just going to get the center point here, and hopefully then it'll all scale around that point. And then I'm just going to scale this down, hold Shift, and I'm just going to try and get the same kind of angle there, and that should give us some pretty decent matching UVs there. We can just move those up a little bit out of the way. So these aren't overlapping. And now what we need to do, we need to pack all of these UVs into this area. They're all matching the same scale, so we just need to pack them all in. And it's going to be pretty difficult. You can see there's a lot of UVs to be packed in here. So we need to use as much of the space as we can. Oh, actually, there's this one element down here. We just need to fix this up. So this needs to match up with, let me see. I think the best thing to match up is probably this edge here, which will align, which should align with this edge here. It should be the same size. So let's just select this element. We'll just rotate it around until we've got the same alignment there. And then we can just go in, just turn off this checker here. It's a bit distracting. We'll just zoom in here into that position there. Zoom out. And now we can scale this holding down control, obviously, to keep it uniform. And we can zoom right in there. And then we just want to get it to match up as best as we can. Now that, if I just close the editor, is that edge there. It should match up here, and you can see you're getting a perfect match between the UVs there. That's pretty much bang on. So now that we have that, we can now move it over here. We'll just rotate it all the way around again. We can possibly fit it in this space, and we can leave most of these steps in here, and because it's a nice space and we may as well use it. And what we're going to do is we're just going to scale everything down at first, just to give us a bit more space. So let's just do that. Let's just scale everything down. There we are. I'll just move it over here slightly. And we're going to try and get this side of the stairs to fit in there. That's looking good. And we really need to get this to fit in, so let's see if we can get that to shift over slightly. We need a little bit more space again, so let's shrink it down a little bit more. And just go like oops-a-days. And I'll just hold down control to make sure that it's uniform. We don't get any non-uniform scaling in there. Now if I move that, we'll see if that'll fit in. That's pretty much there. It's not quite there, so I'll just move it up a little bit. There we go, so we've got those two elements to fit in there. It's pretty good. Now then, let's see if we can fit in the rest of it. We can't scale this object really, so the only thing we can do with it is rotate it. So let's just do a quick rotation there. We can put it there. And we can't scale this element either, so we can only really rotate it. So let's just rotate that around a couple of times until we get it to the kind of orientation that I want. It'll fit horizontally across the screen here, so let's just make it fit in that space as best we can. You can see I'm going to have to do something with these. They stick over the edge here. And we can just move this up here to fit in this space here. That's fine. So what we need to do now is just detach off these faces here, and we need to move up these elements here. So let's just select by element, move this up here slightly, just go down, make sure that it's not overlapping. No, that's cool. Select this element, move this up here. You can just get this to sit on top of here, and that's useful if you want to copy the texture from here to here, so you can very quickly texture both sides. And now we just need to get these faces and bring them into our set. So we'll just turn off select element, so I can select individual faces. We'll just select these, break. Obviously we're going to get a seam here, and we'll just move this into here. Now let's have a look. We've got some space down there. Could we fit it in there? Possibly if I rotated it. Let's have a look. Nope. Doesn't look like it's going to fit in there. So we can just put that back up here. We'll leave it in that position there. So that's it for this area. You can see we've got all the UVs to be the same scale, and we've tried to reduce as much as we can any kind of seams that we could. We've obviously had to introduce one here to try and get everything to fit into this space, but it's actually not too bad. It's just the one seam. And it's all looking pretty cool. Now these are offset slightly, but there is a bang-on correspondence between the size of the two UVs, And if you wanted to, if the texture artist wanted to do something across that seam, you could try laying out the UVs in a different way to try and get a better matchup in that respect. But in this case, it's working just fine, and I think it'll do for the purposes of this tutorial. So as you can see, we've got the inner walls textured here, and we've got this working just fine. So let's move on to the next chapter, where we'll unwrap the back wall of the building, the door, and the chimney and the supports.